Welcome everybody to our community flood update online. My name's Martin Hawson and I'm Mildura Rural City Council CEO. Can I start by acknowledging the lands that we're meeting on today, which now comprise Mildura Rural City Council. I'd also like to acknowledge their elders, both past, present and emerging. Today we have Mark Trell, who's the Incident Controller. Welcome back, Mark. James Kelderman, who's the General Manager Operations Community with Mallee Catchment Authority. Also Mark Jenkins, who's Mildura Rural City Council's Acting General Manager and Municipal Recovery Manager. And we're also joined by Superintendent Rebecca Olsen from VicPol. Without too much further ado, I'll hand over to Mark, who'll just give us an update on the latest information and advice straight out of the ICC.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. We've had a bit of a review on our peak now, and our peak is pushed back about 7 days. We're looking at about the 7th of December for a reach level, not a peak at this stage. We still keep talking about reach, and that we'll still see moderate flooding around. We're still looking at a peak later on in the end of December. That's part of that is due to the Euston levee failure and some of that water from the Murray disappearing up there for a little while, which is and the result of that is we'll see the level on the Murray drop a little bit. That's not saying that it's all going. We'll see the river come back up, which means we're still in flood, and that reach and peak will still be coming. We do have an emergency warning which says that it's not safe to return to parts of Mildura, which is around Nichols Point, Bruce's Bend and surrounding areas, and there's 6 other watch and acts in place. We know the weather's heating up, and over the weekend it's going to be quite warm, but we don't want people swimming anywhere in the river or any of the floodwaters. We don't know what's in the water, and it is not the place to swim. There's plenty of other pools around Mildura for people to use. People should also watch out for snakes. Now with the waters rising, we're seeing much more snake activity, and as the weather warms up, we'll see those out and about a lot more. But if you do see snakes, stay away from them. Don't try and hit them with a stick, because they'll come back at you. There's been a huge amount of building works on levees, and they're there to protect the community. What we don't want is people using those levees as vantage points to have a look at what's going on in the river. Any people or any vehicles or anything on those levees can cause damage, and what we don't want is that damage to cause a failure. If people have any questions about domestic use of the water, please speak directly to Lower Murray Water. We are hearing reports about people inquiring about using the water for washing or consumption. We certainly don't want people doing that. And in wrapping up, just remember Mildura is still open for business. We're still trying to keep the tourists coming up here. If you are coming to Mildura, please check with your accommodation providers to make sure that they're still able to provide you accommodation, but there's still plenty to do up here. Just stay away from the river.
Thanks, Mark. Over to James, just give us an update from the CMA.
Yep, so I can talk to you about where the peak is in the river and when it's expected in Mildura. So the Murray River level at Walkall Junction peaked, as we know, back on Sunday the 13th of November, and it remains steady, only 4 centimetres below that peak height there. So that shows us that the peaks will be prolonged in this event, that it's lasting such a long time upstream. The peak is very slowly approaching Boundary Bend at the moment. That's where the Murrumbidgee joins the Murray River. It's currently only 1 centimetre off the peak height for Boundary Bend, and a prolonged peak is expected there through till mid-December. The Murray River at Euston dropped slightly on Monday due to the levee failing you were talking about there, Mark, and that has dropped the river level slightly, but it did recover quite quickly back up to where it was, and will continue to rise and remain at near that peak level in Euston through till mid-December as well. The levee breach did delay the flood peak for Mildura, as you described, and we have observed the rate of river level slow in Mildura, and in other locations it's dropped. But as you mentioned, Mark, please don't presume that is the peak height of the river. It's not. It's just as a result of that water moving through that breached levee and filling up a lake in New South Wales. So we will see that minor hiatus in the river height rise recover very quickly in the coming days, and then we'll keep progressing up to the forecast height of 38.3 metres for Mildura, That forecast height has not changed. It's just that it's been delayed by a week. So it's around Wednesday next week. At the moment, we're predicting that the height will be realised of 38.3. But as Mark mentioned, that's not the peak forecast yet. The Bureau is saying it's a reach forecast, and as greater confidence is realised and flows are seen and observed upstream, then they'll revise the forecast to form a peak. That's when we know we've hit the highest point in this event. What does that mean for inundation in and around Mildura is what everyone's very interested in. What it means is that the flood footprint has not changed. It's not forecast to change. So the 2% map, which has been available on Council's website for just over a month now, remains the best source of information to understand where that floodwater may go. Please do remember though, it is just a model that's produced that tool, and both the forecast from the Bureau of Meteorology and that mapping is based on past historic flood events, and it may vary slightly from what is predicted. And that's okay, because the mapping that's been shown has got a buffer in it of around 0.5 metre, so we prepare for the worst and we hope for the best.
Thanks, James. Very comprehensive. So I guess you're still not willing to predict how long the actual floodwaters will be around once we've reached that peak of next week.
That's correct. At the moment, the best indication would be towards the end of December for the peak height. And if we look upstream, that is our best indicator. So let's keep watching Euston over the coming weeks. We know that the peaks are at least staying for 2 weeks, maybe longer. So at the moment, probably around the 2 weeks or into the end of December.
Okay, so it's fair to say the water's going to be around with us for Christmas in some form or another.
That's right.
But it's difficult to predict where we'll continue to update that and get that latest information. But basically, that's really where we're at with the forecast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark and James. Now we're joined by another Mark Jenkins, and also Rebecca Olsen from VicPol. Great to see you, Beck.
Thank you.
Mark, can you give us a bit of an overview and an update on our relief and recovery, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin. So just to remind one, Council's role in a relief and recovery situation emergency, where we usually bring together a broad range of stakeholders to coordinate delivery of a range of different support services for residents. And that covers things like particularly food relief, accommodation, health and wellbeing, and mental health support, and business and residential support for grants and hardship grants. So Council currently has a service. You can contact the Council Relief and Support Service on our Council phone number on 5018 8100, and that service is open to the public normal business hours and also over the weekend. So on our website we also have links to information about river levels, flood levels, road closures, etc. So probably today, to date, food relief, we've had about 45 referrals from the public, from people seeking assistance and from the council, and that's been mainly around accommodation and food relief. So I'd stress anyone who is in need of any advice around particular accommodation and food relief should contact the council. People should also contact council around grants that are available through FFH, because there's a range of supports available to both residents and business. So don't be afraid to contact the council and ask that question, because people should come forward if you think there is any need or you're eligible. It's important you come forward now rather than put it off or potentially think other people are worthy and you're not yourself. So I think it's important people come forward if you think you're eligible and ask the question. It's also important for people to think about their neighbours as well. So if you're not sure about your neighbours or someone else needs support, you're welcome to contact the council and get some advice on next steps.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Now over to you, Rebecca Olsen, who's the Superintendent from VicPol.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So thanks for having me. There's a number of things I'd like to remind the community of today, and one is really focused on road safety. So I really discourage any travel or transport through any of our waterways, roads that have been impacted and covered by water. So it may appear that the water is not deep, but you can't see the damage to the road underneath, and it's widely known and understood that we've got significant damage across our road network as a result of the water that has gone across roads. So if we could also ask that people avoid walking, riding or driving on the levees. So any movement around those levees really compromises the security of the levee banks. And also if we could also remind people, I know that the site is fairly spectacular, the river is looking impressive, but there's quite a significant amount of construction going on around the flood impacted areas, and this is causing concern for residents in those areas. So we have deployed increased police to try and discourage that sightseeing appeal. Across the Mallee, we have additional resources that have been deployed in support of the reassurance patrols for our community. You will have seen that there's a number of different sort of shaped and sized, different variety of vehicles that have come from other locations. We've had increased patrols on the river also, particularly for those residences that are over the river, and we're working very closely with our New South Wales and South Australian police counterparts.
Yeah, thanks, Beck. And I think it's a really important message. You know, a lot of effort's been put into those levees, and there's some levees are close to the road, and where that happens, that's obviously why we're putting signage up there to protect that, because the last thing we want to do is actually see those levees come under risk of breaching, or they are under a lot of strain. There's a lot of water behind those levees, and so we'd really appreciate the community's cooperation. Just obey those roadside signs. They are there for a reason, and it's really about protecting the people that are in and around that area. So that's very important.
Safe.
Yeah. Today's video will remain on Council's Facebook page. So obviously, if you want to share that or you see useful information, please share that to others, or you want to watch it again, and it will remain there. We'll continue to do these updates as long as there's interest, so we do welcome comments and so forth on the pages. If there's some information that you want included in these updates, we're happy to take that on board and look at including that in future updates. In the meantime, stay up to date on the websites and the social pages that are available. There's the Mildura Rural City Council's website, the Mildura State Emergency Service and the Mallee Catchment Authority all have information around what we've talked about today. In the meantime, on behalf of Council and all the other support agencies, please stay safe. Thank you.